A lot of employees during COVID left the workforce, and many have not returned. There is a shortage of employees. What type of employees are not coming back to work? How has the workforce changed? What do we need to do as leaders to attract and retain the workforce? Let's ask Cara Silletto, author of The Staying Power: Why Your Employees Leave and How to Keep Them Longer. Welcome to the Excellent Executive Coaching Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Katrina Berus, and today we have the pleasure of interviewing Cara Silletto. Cara, welcome.
Hello, hello. So glad to be with you.
So, Cara, briefly introduce yourself.
Sure. So I am Cara Silletto. I live just outside of Louisville, Kentucky, which is where my firm is based. It's called Magnet Culture, and we work with organizations across the U.S. to reduce unnecessary employee turnover by bridging generational gaps and making managers more effective in their roles.
So we're going to start right away on that topic. So what's the status of today's talent pool, Cara?
Oh, my goodness. Well, it's changing every day. And right now, it is absolutely still pretty difficult to get and keep the talent that we can't afford to lose. Everyone is looking for talent. Most organizations are trying to backfill positions that they have lost that talent to other companies or folks that have just left the workforce altogether. And we're seeing a huge kind of transition from 20 years ago to 10 years ago to today in the types of jobs that people want to do. We're seeing less and less U.S. workers willing to do labor-focused jobs. And that's not just, agriculture and construction and whatnot, but even into the work world, that a lot of folks don't want to do the more menial tasks and the repetitive tasks and things like that because they want to learn, they want to bring more value to the organization, have more connection to the mission and things like that. So it's getting tougher to fill some of those positions where historically we've just wanted folks to come in and do the job and take their paycheck and be happy about it. But that's just not what's happening right at the moment.
So how can you explain this dramatic change in the last 5 years?
Yeah, the last 5 years in particular, we have seen an enormous amount of people reprioritizing their life and reprioritizing what they want their life to look like, where they want to spend their time, their money, their energy. And so, of course, the pandemic was a big, I would say, expediter of that reprioritizing. Now, I've been working on nothing but retention for about 10 years. And we saw even in 2014, 15, 16 and beyond, we saw that people wanted more out of their connection with work. They were asking for more of that work-life balance, which means something different to everybody. But people started to question whether it was worth that corporate rat race and the 50, 60 plus hours a week, or all the overtime and all the sacrifices they were making at home. So of course, when we hit the pandemic, it just exacerbated that issue for people of asking them what really matters. And so you saw a ton of people who have pulled back on their work hours, pulled back on their career. They've decided either to stay at home more. A lot of folks did decide to stay home with their children, for example, who had been working previously. And I think just everybody has decided to focus a little bit more on their hobbies and other aspects of their life, because we realize now that work can come and go, but your friends, your family, what really makes you happy, your passion, your faith, those types of things that are really important to folks, many people realized they had put those on the back burner for too long, and they had been sacrificing that time with the things where they really wanted to spend their time. So I think most people just realized that what they were doing, it was kind of a scope creep. They work a little bit more, and then they work a little bit more, and then a little bit more. And you wake up one day and you're just working all the time. And I think this slowdown gave us an opportunity to realize that that just was not sustainable.
So accepting that they earn less money, generally, if they work less, they earn less.
So that's a really good question. And there are kind of two directions that you can think of this. One is that certainly organizations want to pay you more if you are more valuable and you're bringing in more time and effort and value to the company. But what a lot of the workforce is saying is, the job that you actually hired me to do was supposed to be a 40-hour-a-week job. And you hired me at that level and at that pay to do that particular job. But then you just kept piling stuff on my plate more and more and more. And that's how things got out of whack. And that's how things became unsustainable, is because organizations were really just asking their good employees to do more with less. Do more with less, do more with less. And the companies really had this idea that, okay, now look at how productive we are. Look at how lean we are and how much we're producing. But those expectations of production were not sustainable if you looked at the actual job descriptions that you were hiring people for. And so what the workforce is saying now is, it is time to recalibrate those expectations, companies and leaders, and go back to, I know it seems normal that we're working so many hours and we've got all these productivity metrics to hit and all of these things. But if you look back decades ago, we did a slow creep to those expectations over time. So that workforce is asking for a reset. They're asking to recalibrate and say, please let me have my life back, because I'm supposed to be working and having a life. And a lot of it was driven by the younger workforce that came in. So I happen to be one of the oldest millennials. I was born in 1981. And we were that big 80 million person generation that pushed back, and we saw our parents and our older siblings. We saw them working and working and working and sacrificing at home. And we said, that's not going to happen. We're just not going to do that. So we kind of started this push even within the last 10 to 15 years. And then that mindset of, that's not sustainable. That's not exactly what you hired me for. I am not going to go above and beyond every single day, every single shift. And so now even the older generations of workers are looking at the younger generations and saying, you know what? You're right. I think I've given too much of myself in this role and to this company or to this profession, and I need to recalibrate that myself. So as far as the money side goes, certainly I've never met a person who doesn't want to make more money and doesn't want to be paid at the highest level of the job. But I will say that there are some people who are not willing to take a pay cut. So they are going to have to play the game and continue to produce at high, super high levels. And then we're seeing a larger percentage of the workforce now that is shifting and saying, you know what, that's just not worth it to me. So I will take the pay cut for more flexibility. I will take the pay cut to have more autonomy, more options, even just less expectations that are on my plate. So it's different by person. You can't say that's necessarily a generational thing as far as the money piece. Some people are more money driven than others, and some people want a higher financial lifestyle than others. So they are not willing to take a pay cut, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get that money. Whether it is, in some cases, it might be to work more and be more productive. But also, I have friends who are making tremendous amounts of money, and they have found jobs and found opportunities, even maybe working for themselves, where they can make the top dollar that they want to make and still have that work-life balance and reprioritizing those aspects of their life. So it isn't a one-size-fits-all. It isn't equal to, if you work more hours, you will make more money. Some people are just working smarter, not harder, going into the future.
So what can organizations and leaders do today to reduce any excess employee turnover? How are the organization reacting to this trend?
Sure. So it depends on the organization as far as the reactions. Some organizations are digging their heels in and saying, but this is how we do business. And this is what our customers need. And this is the productivity that we expect. And then other organizations are saying, okay, we hear you and we're going to change things. We're changing the expectations. We're working on the job descriptions. We are revamping those workloads and shift hours and things like that. But if a company really wants to make a difference and be able to keep the talent of tomorrow, they have to listen to their people. If you think about it, the higher up we go into management, you can, it doesn't always happen, but you can become quite disconnected from the front line, because once you move up financially and in your role, now you're managing behind a computer, you're managing in meetings, you're managing spreadsheets and metrics, and you're not on the floor or on the line or just in the field with your people as much. And sometimes we start to let those metrics and those spreadsheets and those meetings take over, and we forget who this new workforce is. So first and foremost, you have to stay connected to your people, listen to your people. I'm sending a bunch of my clients on executive listening tours right now. Not a tour to defend your position of how you run your business, but just to go listen and shut your trap, just asking people about what keeps them up at night and why did they work here and what do they want to do with their career and their lives and what's important to them. Because until you care about what your people care about, whether that's their dog or their children or their hobbies or a sick parent that they're caring for, or, whatever it is that keeps them up at night and also brings them joy in their life, until you care about that, why would they turn around and care about what you care about as far as the metrics and the productivity and, and things like that? It has to be a two-way street of caring for people.
So it's really putting the relationship back into the contract between the organization and the people. So by listening to them and recognizing them, and yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not rocket science. So even though now we have very complex business and a lot of industries are operating with complex regulatory environments or reimbursement environments and things like that are very complex, the culture side is pretty simple, and it is know your people, care about your people, support your people. And then that's how we build trust. That's how we build loyalty. That's how they will want to stick around for us. And too many people have been promoted into leadership positions, whether it's all the way to executive roles or it's that frontline supervisor position, every leadership position in between. So many people have been promoted over the last 10 years without being given the training to be a great manager and a great communicator, with emotional intelligence and empathy and understanding generations in the workplace and just general communication tactics, for example. Not enough of them have been given the training for it. And then even less of these managers at different levels have been given the time to actually manage their people, because we kept saying, do more with less, do more with less. So as we piled on more productivity onto these managers, they don't have time to go care about their people and know their people and support their people, which is the fundamental piece that's going to build that loyalty and keep people longer. So we've got to give managers their job back and give them the tools and training to be good supervisors and managers.
So you've given us how to organizations need to change, and especially leaders. What would you say about the workforce, how to be prepared for the future challenges?
So with the workforce, there's a few aspects there. So the workforce also needs to realize that companies do have to do their job, right? We do have to meet customer needs, and we're going to have to meet in the middle. I'm not just asking companies to bend over backwards, do whatever it is that the employees ask for. But one thing that we can do kind of in both directions is to communicate the expectations. So if you're an employee coming into a new job or even an interview, we need to communicate the expectations of how much I plan on working, what my work style is going to be, make sure that that's a really good fit for the company. And then also the employer is going to have to communicate their expectations of this is how we meet our customers' needs. This is what we expect from folks. And the expectation piece is so interesting because people tell me all the time, oh, I tell them, I communicate, I tell them. But then they think that the workforce can read their mind and can fill in the gaps. So let me give you an example. A CFO came up to me after a workshop and I had talked about communicating your expectations. I had given some examples, but she came up to me afterwards and said, this is ridiculous. I have asked my team every week at our staff meeting to give me a status update. And every week, all they come in and say is, everything's fine. And that's not what I want. And I said, well, that sounds like a status update to me. I mean, if you ask me for a status update and I say everything's fine, it's a very small status update, but it does technically qualify as a status update. And I asked the woman, so what do you want your team to come to the meeting prepared to talk about? How do you define a status update? And she said, well, I want them to tell me what have they accomplished since our last meeting? Where are they now? What's next on their list? Have they hit any roadblocks that we need to address? And I just went silent and let her think about that for a minute. And then she said, oh, that's what I need to ask for.
I see.
And so she realized that while she started the conversation, she literally told me her team was terrible communicators, is what she told me at the beginning of the conversation. And by the end of the conversation, she realized that if she simply changed her communication approach, it would solve the entire problem. And that she was making an assumption that everybody else could read her mind and that they knew what she meant by give me a status update. So we just need to make sure that we don't have those assumptions as an organization who is, for example, onboarding new folks, or as a leader who is trying to teach and manage and delegate to your staff. We have to make sure that there isn't miscommunication caused by that assumption.
Absolutely. So clarify your ideas, clarify your assumptions, be very specific in what your expectations are, both ways, in fact.
Yes.
Yeah.
More specific than you've ever been in your career, because that is needed today. Other people don't think like you do, don't work like you do, haven't been raised like you were. So we have to fill in those gaps. And that takes extra time for managers to spend the time really clarifying and communicating more effectively.
And then also making sure that they understand what you're saying so that they can reiterate the expectations. So
Exactly.
What would you say is a strategy every leader should be able to implement and to be more magnetic as a leader and draw their people in?
Yeah, so it is a totally basic thing, but I'm not seeing enough of it. And that is appreciate any job well done, because today's workforce can go anywhere and get a paycheck. It is not about the paycheck anymore. In fact, they could probably go somewhere else and get a bigger paycheck from most companies. But if we have leaders who really do care about their people, they're going to notice the good work that they do. So if you're a company who has, for example, lower wage workers that you struggle with punctuality and attendance, then we need to appreciate and recognize the people who show up, which a lot of people get upset about that and say, I'm not going to thank people for showing up. That's why they get a paycheck. But again, they can go anywhere for the paycheck. So we have to do more than that. We have to appreciate them showing up, because let's be honest, some people are not showing up. And then if you have higher skilled, higher paid workers, and you don't have as much of that 30, 60, 90 day type of turnover, if you have higher skilled talent, then again, you still need to appreciate all of their contributions. When they finish a project or meet a deadline, recognize that. Even though a lot of managers would say, well, yeah, that's their job. They met the deadline. I shouldn't have to say anything about that. But the person still put in the effort, and they could have gone somewhere else and given their talent and their effort elsewhere. So we still want to say thank you on a regular basis, and it doesn't cost us anything, and it doesn't become disingenuous as long as you are being authentic about it. And what I mean is, you have to dig way down deep in your heart and truly find the gratitude. Like, aren't you glad they hit that deadline? Yes. So why not just say, hey, really appreciate you hitting that deadline. Thanks so much. It has to be genuine. It has to be authentic. It should be specific, not just a generic, hey, thanks for everything you do, but really pinpointing actions and contributions that you do appreciate and that you have recognized. And that makes a huge difference on building trust with your team and building that loyalty that's going to make you more magnetic, where folks want to work for you and want to stay.
Yes, and so to observe what they're doing so that you're able to really very specifically appreciate what they did.
Exactly.
So what you're saying. But on the other hand, very hardworking leaders that assume and work overtime, I can understand that they can say, well, they're paid for it and therefore don't realize that they have to motivate people, even for showing up, as you say.
Absolutely. It may seem silly, but it makes a huge difference. And I'll tell you, Katrina, that I'm seeing more and more managers out there who are recalibrating that thank you meter. They are increasing the amount of appreciation and recognition they give. And it is working, from sending handwritten notes to people's homes to celebrating milestones of tenure or milestones of projects or competencies. It really does matter to the workforce today, and it really does get their attention and get their loyalty.
Like you say, they're being recognized, they're being seen for what they're contributing. Thank you, Cara. We come to the end of our podcast. Where can people get a hold of you?
Well, our organization's website is wereduceturnover.com. And you can, of course, find me on LinkedIn. I am the only Cara Silletto on the planet. It's Cara with a C, C-A-R-A, Silletto, S-I-L-L-E-T-T-O.
Thank you very much, Cara. Wonderful, very pertinent subject at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Excellent Executive Coaching Podcast. You can subscribe to all future podcasts at excellentexecutivecoaching.com. Join us each Wednesday to learn more about the latest trends in leadership techniques and bring your coaching to the next level. To learn more about Dr. Burris's CEO Mastermind, use the contact form at excellentexecutivecoaching.com.